You are now listening to the Artist King podcast, featuring interviews with professional artists, entrepreneurs, and art business educators. Artist King's mission is to fuel the passion and build the business knowledge of the artists to further their success in the art industry. We want to hear your suggestions and comments and subject ideas to discuss in future podcasts. Please send an email to podcast@artistking.org.
Welcome to episode 12 of the Artist King podcast. I am your host, DTM. In this week's Artist King podcast, the amazing Cleveland artist known around the world as Neal Hamilton visits the studio, and he shares with us some of his triumphs, battles, and art life experience as we get to know him just a little bit more. I first met Neal a few years ago. One of us reached out to the other. I don't recall exactly how that went. But that year we produced, along with Mano Mano Art Show's crew, 4 art shows, and Neal brought in some of his art to a couple of these shows, including a huge paintings of Batman, Superman, and Spider-Man. And let me tell you, they stole the show. Before we begin the interview, I want to take the time to thank our Artist King sponsors, the law offices of Deborah Gonzalez, Binder's Art Store, now opening a new Midtown store, Atlanta Tech Village, C4 Atlanta, Wonder Root, Burnaway, and donors like you who visit artistking.org and leave a donation to support the mission of Artist King. This year's Artist King Conference takes place across the Atlanta area and spans 8 weeks starting in September 9th till November 4th, and ending at the biggest art show of the year, November 22nd in Buckhead. Artist King will feature a creative panel of entrepreneurs, professional artists, and art industry organizations discussing topics that affect the artist, the community, and the business of being an artist. The November art show is titled The Way of the Artist and will feature the LAE class of 2014, their art, their graduation, art, body paint, and our infamous Pencil Wars drawing competition that includes every person present at the show. Our featured DJ is Mr. E, rocking the crowd till late at night. Mark your calendar, November 22nd at the Atlanta Tech Village. The call for art is now open. Email me directly to add you to the artist list at dtm@artistking.org. Keep checking artistking.org for upcoming classes, workshops, art exhibits, and of course, the Artist King podcast. Tell a friend. Now on to your Neal Hamilton interview. This is Dan, and we're at Artist King podcast, and I'm sitting here with Neal Hamilton. How you doing, Neal?
Very good, sir. How are you, Dan? Good seeing you again.
I'm always doing great, and I thank you for coming by.
You're welcome.
And being patient with us.
Oh, please.
So, for those of the listeners who don't know who you are, tell us what you do, where you're from.
Long story. I'm actually from Cleveland, Ohio. I've been down here for about almost 4 years now. It's a long story to my history. I've been in this game a long time.
Long time?
Long time. At least almost 35, 40 years in the business. And I used to be a chief photographer for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and resident artist, for 10 years with them. From day one, I was able to be blessed to work with so many musical stars and tour with probably everybody that is in the music business. And just before that, I had run my own firm called Livewire Studios, our own commercial art firm downtown Cleveland for about 5 years. And I worked with some of the top illustrators at the time.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us, when you were growing up, because we're going way back.
Okay.
What was the art form that caught you, and how?
It was the strangest thing. I mean, Arsenio Hall lived like 3 doors down from me. We were growing up. So
what?
Yeah. We had a lot of fun in the streets, little kids at the time. And even at the time, it's amazing how people fall into their life journey early. Because we would be down in the basements, rehearsing little TV shows and little things. And, little did we know that's what our city would really be doing one day. And I was always the set design before we even knew what set designing was.
Oh, yeah?
Or drawing on, with magic markers, doing T-shirts for our shows and all kinds of cool stuff. So I got into the business early before I even knew it was a business.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really funny.
How'd that idea come up?
No, we would just put our heads together and say, let's do this, let's do that, let's do it, and we need this kind of person, and we need an artist. I'm saying, I can draw, let's do it, But, it started early. My grandmother told me before she passed away, she said, I used to come up to her, I was like three or four, and I asked my grandma, can you draw me a dinosaur, the typical little boy stuff. And she would draw a dinosaur, and I said, no, Grandma, let me do that for you. And I would redraw it for her a lot better than she did. Right. So by the time I was 10 years old, they knew I had something going on. So they enrolled me at the Cleveland Museum of Art on Saturdays for art courses. Those kids were out playing, and I had to go to art school. I don't know if I liked it at the time, but I'm glad I did.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And that was at 10 years old.
10 years, yeah.
So what other encouragement did you get out of high school, or did you pursue any more art?
Oh, absolutely. That was my strongest course all the time. I don't think I was not half paying attention to all the other courses, but when it was art class time, I loved that. I never missed that. I was never late for that class. Always there, learning to draw, learn to paint, learn to use different mediums and all kinds of stuff like that. But it was so funny though. Even on some of those days, I had detentions or something. We all had that. I would always...
Not me.
Yeah, right. I would be drawing on the tables. It's really strange that some of the things I was drawing pictures of, I actually do professionally now. I would draw a whole scene of Jimi Hendrix on the stage playing his guitar and all kinds of cool stuff. And by the end of the week, whoever else was in detention had added all kinds of more stuff to it.
Wow.
So a week go by, we had a complete mural,
wow.
On the desk, And it's just really weird that that's what I do for a living now. All these years later, yeah.
Right. Did you think you were gonna do that as a career?
God, no.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
I was into music too. I'm a bass player, so it was always between music art. I knew something was going on, but at the time I was just grooving, having a lot of fun. And so I wasn't thinking, okay, where am I really going to be? Until it was time, when I got married the first time, and kids start coming, and real responsibilities come, that's when you say, oh boy, okay, I better start to do something to make money now. So I was an industrial designer too, so
Did you go to college for that?
Oh yeah. Went to Cleveland School of Art in Tri-C, so I learned how to do technical illustration, architectural drawing, engineering. I've learned almost everything you can learn in the art field.
And back in those days, and I say those days because I know we're grown, it was all by hand. There was no Photoshop, Illustrator.
Oh, there was nothing like that. Our company, I was working for a company called Artist Studios. That was like the biggest commercial firm in Cleveland at the time. And I remember when our boss came to us and said, okay, everything changes right now. We are going to now be enrolled into classes to learn the Macintosh computer. Nobody knew what this was. Wow. We're like, what do you mean? Because everybody, I was in a room where there was people like Norman Rockwell types, who were real illustrators who illustrated things all day, every day. So when you came to these people who've been doing this their whole lives and say, okay, we're now going to learn to draw with a mouse, and we're going to be on this new machine that nobody knew anything about. It was the strangest thing to see that come in, and there was a lot of rebellion. A lot of people quit. Some of us who were younger, the older people said, "No way, they're not even going to waste their time. They're not even going to bother."
I know people like that now.
Exactly, they're just going to say, "No way, there's no way." But the younger people, some of us who were younger, we had to, at the time, and I didn't really have one to either, because it was like, how am I going to do this and catch up to where I am already?
Right, how you going to study? Take the time to study and still do the work you need to do.
And it was so raw at the time. When that computer came out, it was like dot matrix stuff.
Yeah.
It really didn't have any good stuff. Whole different world now, of course.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. That's how we're recording half the stuff we're doing.
There you go, right. We would have never known it would have gotten this far, because it was ugly at first. Nobody was really convinced at the time, because they just didn't have what it took to really do the kind of work we already did manually, like you said.
Got it.
So when I talk to young people today about ruby lifts and overlays and registration marks and things, they look at me like, what the heck is he talking about? But that's the way things were done those days.
So you went to Pittsburgh School of Art?
No, Cleveland School of Art.
Cleveland
yes.
School of Art. I'm thinking about different artists.
You are.
Ohio.
I would have liked to go to Pittsburgh. That would have been fun too. Yeah,
that's a good one.
That was a good school up there, yeah.
So you went to the School of Art, and how'd you get the job at the design company?
No, you would just, in those days, you just had to beat doors down. those kind of places did not hire. They did not advertise. They never hired.
They didn't go to the school of career day and
They might have, but not really. They had all the people they always needed in their firm. So somebody had to literally quit or die. No, seriously, before they would take in a new illustrator. Okay, and I was like the first African American to even work for this company.
Wow.
So I remember coming there and beat the door down and say, can I have an interview? And then we, shoo you away, and then you come back the next 2 weeks and I want to show you my portfolio, and they say, okay, come on in, let me see what you got, And at the time, I had a very strong portfolio, and then I had a lot of technical illustration. I think that's what caught their eye. They already had the big-time illustrators that did all the full color, all the great stuff, so they weren't looking for that. But what I did, they had found a niche. Said, okay, maybe we can use you. So they squeezed me in. So I did all that pen and ink work that had to happen in the newspapers every Sunday for all the ads. Because in those days, we had to manually draw pictures of everything that Office Max sells. I was one of the first illustrators doing Office Max ads.
Wow.
Before we even knew what Office Max was. I wish I would have bought stock in that company. We had no idea.
So you were doing newspaper layouts?
Yes.
With
Rapidographs.
Wow.
Yeah. The old-fashioned way, yeah.
And when did the idea come to you that, I want to have my own agency?
Well, soon after that, when I had a friend move, to a cubicle next to mine out of New York, and I had a few other people. You know how those things line up, and then we all start getting ideas. We're like, you know what, we need to go start our own company, and that's what we did. I think somebody heard. They must have overheard us. Somebody ratted on us or something, because next thing you know, we're all getting pink slip 2 weeks later. We're like, wait a minute.
Is that right?
This can't just be a coincidence, right? So somebody must have known that we were already planning this. So next thing you know, we're in the unemployment line, right? We're like, how did that happen? We got this great job, and now we're at the unemployment line. So we laughed. We just went in there to get our check, and next thing you know, we went and found our own building, and we started our own company. We didn't skip a beat.
It's all in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yes.
And then, so how'd you go find customers? What was the business like?
I mean, in those days, you had real agents, you had real representatives that actually would go. They had their clientele, and they would go walk those beats out there. Like at the time, we had like Firestone Tires, were big clients like that for us, and those kind of things. We had to manually illustrate a tire. Remember, the cutaways, you see all the belts inside and all that stuff. That was all hand done and airbrushed in those days. Very, very, very tedious process. Might be 10 overlays to make that one tire that people would just go look at a newspaper and not even realize.
Okay, so I'm thinking about deadlines. Today's world, in 2014, because I do graphic design, I know we know plenty of artists who do graphic design. When you hear about the job they need done, it's because they need it tomorrow. And of course, you got Photoshop and Illustrator, and you can sit there and say, you know what, I'm not happy about doing it, but I'm going to charge you enough to make it worth my time, and I'm going to go ahead and knock it out. But if in those days everything was done manually and by hand, and you had to go find the plant, beat up the plant to get the ink, and then and beat up the plant to make the paper, what kind of deadlines were these? I mean, you had to have like really, really long
No, I'm laughing at what you're saying. You said tomorrow. We didn't have that much time. They would say we need it yesterday. Even with that old manual stuff, we had to kick some butt. So the boss walked around the corner and said, okay, we got this layout for the newspaper. We got these paint can labels that need to be done. And it better be done first thing in the morning before you got to work.
You ever watch that TV show Mad Men?
Yes.
Does that remind you of...
Yes. It's true. No, this is that's why half those artists are pretty nuts sometimes. In those days we had to do exceptional work, and there was no technology. It had to be done the old-fashioned way, and people did it, and we still got it done.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm surprised when I look at even though I like shows like that because of history. I'm a history guy. And but then you look at some of the details. They really get detailed with the sets and how they do the stories with like Mad Men, and they have the creatives room and all this art and all this stuff, and they're actually doing it by hand. Like,
oh yeah, we'd be fighting it out in those things. Trying to decide which way we're going to go. We get called into a meeting, like you said, and everybody would put their storyboards and their ideas on the wall, and then we fight it out. Who's the best idea? And we're going to build on that, and then as soon as we pick one, they start to separate all the departments. We had in those days we had a film, photographic department, and you had the typography department. See, people like, what is that? Okay,
yeah, what is
so we would get all the department heads again and say, okay, we got to have this ad done. like I said, by tomorrow at a certain time, and everybody would be up there all day and all night if it took to get it done.
Wow.
Oh yeah, it was something else, but people did it. But see, that's something I like to tell the young people today too. See, it's a great foundation if you knew where it really came from. So if you knew how to do some manual stuff, because sometimes electricity might go out. What happens if the electricity goes out? What are you going to do? Stop and go, well, my computer won't work. No, that's not an excuse. They're going to still say, where's my job? And it better be done tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Okay? Yeah. So it feels good to know if I had to sit there with one little candle light on, I can still get a job done manually if I have to. There's tricks we know how to put things together manually still. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So tell us a little bit about once you had your agency, what made you stop?
Well, basically, I mean, we had 5 years in, and that's crazy running a business. Trust me, that was a lot of work. I mean, I don't know if I ever saw home. I had kids to raise, but it seemed like we spent more time at that studio. We were there around the clock, night and day, all the time, because it was our business. So you got to work, twice as hard when you run your own show. So that's what we did.
And then you said that's enough.
And then after that, no, I think one of my friends, one of my top guys, he got an offer from Disney. I said, you can't pass that up. You got to go down there and be an illustrator with Disney and get into the animation and all the cool stuff that was going on at the time. So we said, we had enough, let's take a break. So I took like a year off. And then that's when I got the call from somebody at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They're going to build a new place. They said, you know what, we'd like you to cover some of our events as a photographer, because I was an NFL photographer at the time. I was on the field working with, the NFL. And they said, okay, we want you to shoot some pictures for us. So I wasn't thinking anything about it. And then I covered the day, the groundbreaking, ribbon-breaking event when the Rock Hall became new there.
The beginning.
And I submitted my pictures, and the lady called me the next day and said, hey, you got some great photographs. Can we buy them from you? So, of course, I'm like, sure, buy them. I don't care. Then 2 weeks after that, she said, we want you to submit a proposal to be the official photographer there. So I said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. But I knew there was other photographers who really are better, and they've been doing this longer. That wasn't what I was trying to do. But, sometimes, the spirit's going to move the way it's got to move, okay? So you just got to go along with it. So the lady called me up, and she said, hey, guess what? Congratulations, you're our new photographer.
Wow.
Just like that. I'm like, okay. So, all right, they'll pay me a lot of money to hang out with rock stars all day, every day. I'm like, okay, cool. So that actually became a lot of fun, and I really got into that. And then that's when I really got more into the tech world. I was like one of the first guys to actually start using digital photography, because we were all film at the time and analog stuff. And I said, you know what? This technology is going to change. It's going to go digital. And they didn't believe me. They weren't going to invest in it at the time. So I invested my own money learning the digital game before anybody. When I walk around now, everybody's got digital stuff and they're all having a ball. But we were some of the pioneers in it.
So you were taking pictures with film cameras.
Yes.
And you said, we need to start moving on to some digital stuff.
Yes.
And they said, no.
Yeah, they didn't want to believe in it. I said, no, this is going to be quicker, better. And then I bought like Apple's first titanium laptop. So when we would shoot a live concert, I proved to them that we could download this information right now, send it off to Rolling Stone magazine or all the world music magazines instantly, and they could see it done. And then once they start to see that, then they kind of woke up and said, oh, I get it now.
No more dark rooms.
That's right. I mean, we don't like that. That was an art in itself.
Right.
It's a sad thing that we had to sacrifice true art. That's like Ansel Adams stuff. Some of these photographers go in that dark room and they work magic. But that's an art that's lost now.
Yeah, a lot of chemicals.
Yeah, all the chemicals. But it really took. You had to know something to go in that dark room and get that done.
Yeah.
But it's not that way anymore.
Right. I feel you. I see. It's a process, and it's it's an art form.
Yes. I hope we keep some kind of balance of it. I don't want the past to just disappear.
No, I know artists. I know photographers who shoot with film still.
Do they really?
Yeah.
You can actually still get film?
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll cost you though.
I can imagine.
Film's gonna cost you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lord.
Oh yeah. It ain't like it used to be. I think Fuji went down a few years ago.
Really? That was my big sponsor. So Fuji. Yeah.
That was hard because that's like a big producer.
That was my favorite film, Fuji 800.
But yeah, there's out there. There's people doing it.
Okay.
Purists. So let's see. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and so obviously you met a lot of musicians?
Well, let me break in that part. You know, when I got that job there, it was kind of weird because I actually stopped doing art for 10 years. Mm-hmm. I had so much fun. They were paying me so much money that I actually said, well, I don't need to do any art for a while. I actually stopped doing my art. Now, that sounds like a long time. Sounds crazy, right? Mm-hmm. Especially when art is in my blood. But I remember about the 9th year working there, my home and studio burned down in a fire. So once again, that's how the spirit moves. And I had another house out in the country, moved my family out there while they were going to rebuild this house, and pacing around, frustrated, waiting for the insurance companies to do what they do. I saw a blank canvas, and I said, you know what, I feel like painting again. I'm frustrated. I haven't painted in years. Let me paint something cool, you know. And then I realized, oh, God, I don't have any paintbrushes. Oh, God, I don't have any paint. I don't have any supply. It burned up in the fire, right? So I found some old cans of house paint laying around, some putty knives, and some just unusual things. And I said, okay, I'm a professional. I'm going to still make something happen. And that's what I created Paint Out Loud with. That came out of the worst time of my life. So now the brand that I had that the world seems to see now came from that disaster.
So the way you lay out the paint on the canvas and all the little bumps on it, the textures on it, it was born there in a burnt house.
Yeah, well, after a burnt up house. Because I didn't have the traditional tools. So once again, like I said, we all get so comfortable with all of our gadgets and all of our stuff. And you have to ask the question, what would happen if somebody just took it all away from you?
Right.
Could you still produce something, you know, that's
and it's a challenge. You should challenge yourself and be there.
Yeah, but a lot of people don't, because once again, it's a comfort zone. You know, we get so caught up in the comfort zone because everything is all perfect. Mm-hmm. But what happens if something is not perfect?
Right.
Are you still able to create?
Right. You know, a few years ago, 10 years ago. Yeah, 10 years ago. No, longer than that. 2001, I did 90 days in jail in Cobb County, and for traffic stuff, and too much traffic stuff problems. And so all they do is they give you the ink. You can't have pencils.
Can't even have pencils.
And you can. They gave you ink pens, but just that inside part of the ink pen, and the tip and the little tube holding the ink. And I was in there the first few days, and I didn't have anything. And so of course I want snacks, and I want a pillow, and I want stuff other people have. And I said to myself, well, I need to let them know I'm an artist so I can trade for some stuff. And so I said, look, I can draw. You know, somebody give me a pen. And they handed me the pen. I'm thinking to myself, man, at home I got $10 pencils. You know.
Oh, of course.
You know,
that's
and,
right.
And like I need my pencils. And but you're right. But I had to ask myself, no, I'm a real artist.
That's right.
I'm a real artist. I can draw with anything. You have this talent, and you should be able to create with this. With whatever tools are around.
That's right. Always. And like I said, it's all about survival. Like you said, you had to survive. You had to get something. So once again, even when I have moments where I'm not making that much money or there's a gap between contracts, I love the barter system. I'm always trading my work for something. So if I like a few restaurants around town, I make a deal with them. Here, I'll do this piece for you, and you give me $500 or $1,000 of free food and drink when I come in here. It all works because you're going to use that money to go do that anyway.
That's right.
Right? So let's just bypass the middle person.
That's right.
Hey, I make those deals all over town. So when I go to this restaurant there, they're like, oh, yeah, come on in. We got your table waiting for you.
That's better than Groupon.
Yes, it is. I mean, and see, that's how I've survived, especially, like I said, being here in a new city. Like I said, I'm still learning people, learning things, so I've learned how to get in there quick and make those kinds of barter deals.
Got it. So, how long ago was this when you were sitting there in your house and taking those household tools to paint?
Oh, that was 2006. No, 2005.
Wow, that's recent.
Yeah, it's not that long ago, right?
And then you said to yourself, what, I like this, I'm going to keep painting, and I just go to Home Depot?
Well, yeah, but when I did the first one, it came out really nice. I did this portrait of Sting, because like I said, I'm still in the music business, so I'm around these people, so I'm like, okay, I'll do this, And I was surprised that it looked better than I thought it would look, because normally an artist, if we're professional, we're not going to look at cans of house paint and say we're going to create some nice art. We're not going to pick up house paint to do this.
Right.
You're going to stay with your traditional stuff, But once again, that's how that spirit moves. So it hit me on the back of the head and say, okay, do this. Tap in and say, do this. I'm like, okay, I did it. Came out nice. I said, no, this might be a fluke. Let me try another one. And as I kept going, it just kept getting better. And it was striking because my work just has a look that's identifiable, and that's, once again, that's where it came from. Now, my normal brain, my mind would have said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be like a real illustrator, like I was taught to be traditional and oil painting, watercolor, and all the stuff that we've done, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Spirit said something else, and that's where I've been ever since.
So, so there you go. You start some paintings. You're still a photographer.
I touch it now and again. Yeah, people are starting to find out what I used to do, and they're like, "What are you doing? Not taking pictures? You better get that camera."
That's how I feel.
And start taking pictures again. So I have been doing more photography. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's go back to that time. So you're painting now, and you're still taking pictures at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
No, I'm not.
What
still
changed?
There. No, I'm not there anymore. I'm here.
No, I'm not talking about then in 2006.
All
right, or whenever the house burned down.
Well,
what you were doing the photography, your house burns down, you start painting, and then how'd you stop doing photography for the Hall of Fame, and how'd you get to Atlanta?
Well, I think you can see the writing on the wall. I'd had my tenure there. I pretty much covered everything that was really cool. You know, I had the A list of things that happened, and you know that just becomes just almost like a nightclub. After a while, you know, I've
got tired.
Yeah, and I work with the top artists, and then after a while, it starts to kind of go to the B list, down to the C list, and you know, they've already been there, so they're not coming back here again. So I was lucky enough to have the A list, you know. And then I like to get out of the way too for other people. You know, do not sit around and just stay somewhere forever. Get out of the way and let some younger people come in and pick up where you left off.
That's hard. That's hard to do.
Once you get sure it is.
Position.
Yeah, well, yeah. But think about it though. I mean, I know, like you said, it is hard. But it's wonderful for you. You got to be strong enough to say, "Let me get up, get out, and move on, and do something else. Let somebody else get in here and do what they and fulfill their dreams." Right. You can't just drag it on and on and on and on. And then what? You know,
you want to try something new.
Yeah, got to stay fresh. Keeps me young. You know, people are like, "How do you do what you do?" They can't believe my age. You know, and I'm like, "No, because I just love life. I'm gonna always move on and do something else. Always."
Okay, and so that something else included Atlanta.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, now I feel pretty good. I know where I'm going now. I know how to get around. Thank you, God, for GPSs. You know, but I got a lot.
But you've been here years now.
No,
when did you
come?
3.5
years. About 3.5 years ago. Yeah.
And what was the plan?
The plan at the time when I was married, got divorced since I've been here. Oh boy, but you know, she had the plan. I didn't really have a plan. It's like, okay, wait a minute, you got a plan, but I don't have a plan, so I didn't really want to come. Okay, because I didn't have a plan. You don't just show up somewhere without a plan. You know, but as soon as I got here, the AJC did a big cover story on me. Somebody knew who I was, and I was trying to stay under the radar, and they did a big cover story, and everybody's like, "Oh, geez, there he is. He's here in Atlanta now." And then from that point on, things just started popping again.
And they did the story because of your art, because of the paintings, because of your theme, because of what?
Well, the one writer was looking for a particular something, and she was I think she was researching Van Beethoven. And at that time, I had a big client had just contracted me to do a huge portrait of Beethoven. And she just happened to see it somewhere on Google or somewhere. And she goes, "Oh, my God, call this guy right away. But he looks like he's in Cleveland." So she called me. She goes, "Are you in Cleveland because your phone number says Cleveland?" I said, "No, I'm here in Atlanta." She goes, "Oh, my God, stay right there. I'm coming to your studio."
Okay. That's the big frame one.
That's that. That big, huge one. Yeah. That guy paid a lot of money for that. You know, and the custom frame was hand done by an artist in Cleveland that I hired.
Wow. So how did that part of your career begin? I guess you had connections already. You had business connections, so that once you started doing your art, you tapped them in to sell your art?
Well, you know, I got a very unique situation. I don't do what most people do. I don't really play the gallery game. I don't do that much. And people wonder, well, shouldn't your work be here and shouldn't your work be there and shouldn't you be at this festival and that festival? I said no, because I have a long-term plan on, you know, how I sell my brand, okay, and it's very successful right now, you know, so I try to always set myself apart from what everybody else is doing, you know, and it works that way. You know, it might seem harder. It is hard, but after a while, people see the
How do you set your brand apart? What are you doing? Because I want to get to the foundation of this way of your painting and your business, because I know you have the background of the music, you have the background of art, and you're doing something new with the type of techniques and materials you use for your canvases and paintings. But you're painting celebrities. You're painting music celebrities.
Well, that's right. I mean, I do a lot more of that, but that's the focal point right now. You know, like the Eric, the gentleman you had on before, talked about certain things. I kind of want to disagree with him a little bit about him skipping all over the place. once again, you have to understand the human condition, okay, the psyche of people. You know, if you confuse them with too much stuff, they're never going to get it, who you are. So you almost do want to come in to a tight-knit situation, because that's how people start to, they have to recognize who you are in a crowd. So if your painting is hanging up in a wall room, they'll say, oh, that's a florist. They'll know right away. But if you skip all over the place and do all kinds of stuff, which you could, I could too, they'll never know who you are. So once again, your brand is just like McDonald's. You know, we know that when you see a golden arch, you could be in the middle of nowhere in the jungle, but if you see a golden arch, you know what it means.
So you established your brand.
Yes.
With your paintings.
From the business card, from the title of it, to the color palette of it, we stay very strict within what we do.
A lot of yellow.
No, it's just the 5 colors: the yellow, orange, red, black. You know, blue, basic, just your basic primaries. But the way it's done, it sticks out in the crowd. So I've already had world response now. They know that work wherever they see it. And I didn't know it was going to get like that. I mean, once again, Spirit showed up with that one. But now it works. So I'm smart enough, hopefully enough, to say, okay, don't veer too far left and right. Stay right on that road, because now once people identify with you, it does set you apart. So it's really not that complicated anymore. And that's what you build on. Sometimes it takes some time. You know, I like to tell people too, there is no overnight success stuff. Okay, people. Right. I mean, maybe our media today portrays that. It seems like if somebody became, you know, blah 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 overnight. No, it didn't. These people were working for years and years and years to get somewhere. You know, and then finally, when you finally get on that path where people can, because people to me are almost 5, 6, 7 years behind your best idea today. A lot of people don't realize it. They say, "Man, I did this brilliant piece of work and nobody gets it." Well, that's how people work. They really don't get it for a while. It takes a little time for people to go, "Wait a minute. Oh, now I see the genius in what that person's doing." But it comes years later.
So you gotta wait.
You don't.
You gotta wait for the reward.
Yes, we did not know, because if somebody would have told us that you gotta wait this long for somebody to get it, because some of the stuff I'm doing now, I've done years ago and nobody got it then. All of a sudden now you almost walk away and say, "Well, I give up. I'm gonna go do something else." And now those people are calling saying, "Oh my God, we love it and we get it now." And I'm thinking, okay, that was like 6 years ago. I had forgotten even what we were talking about. But that's how it works.
So so that means it's going to take commitment, dedication.
Absolutely. And just never giving up. See, once again, we're in a society, you know, everybody's running all over chasing money. Like Eric said earlier. But don't chase the money. If you chase the money, it's going to run away from you. It's that simple. And you just stay in your groove, you stay in your you know, your jet stream, and that money will find you. Your audience will find you.
If you're enjoying the Artist King podcast, then please consider leaving a shout out on iTunes, Spreaker.com, or StitchRadio.com under Artist King. For more information on the subjects discussed in the Artist King podcast, please visit www.artistking.org.
Because when your house burned down and you're sitting there looking at the materials you have, you weren't thinking about how am I going to make some money with what's in here.
Oh, not at all.
You were thinking about how do I need to get some stress out.
That's it.
Using my creativity.
That's right. There you go. Just like you're talking about with that little ink pen on the envelope. You know, you go into that survival mode. When you're up against the wall somewhere, it becomes survival. So you say, okay, I got to come up with something really cool here right now. I need something that's going to wake me up again. It's going to get my juices going.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
You can't sit there and just waddle away in sadness and go, oh, you know, you got to do something. That's all.
And that was it.
Yeah, and that was it.
And you did what you know how to do, what you're familiar with, and that's it. Now,
yes. But it wasn't even familiar. I was not familiar with that
Not with
stuff.
that technique, but the artists, you're using the artist celebrities, the music people.
Because they all knew me. See, they knew me as a cameraman. You know, if I was out with Earth, Wind, and Fire or hanging out with Bootsy Collins and Funkadelics and all those guys, you know, they knew me as the cameraman. I was doing production camera work all the time for them. So a lot of them didn't even know I could paint. Even though I told them, I'm like, well, I'm an artist. I was actually an artist before, a photographer, but they didn't care. Once again, people don't get too many ideas. You either do one thing and that's it. They can't see that you do 2 things, 3 things, maybe 4 things good. They just think you do one thing. And that's, you get niched sometimes. You know, sometimes it's not good to get trapped in a niche because that's all they think you can do. So after I say, well, God, I paint now, you know. And then we're like, well, let's see what you do. And then when they see it, they're like, oh my God. Because Boosie Collins was like one of my first big clients. He bought all my work like right away. So if you went to the Funkadelics rehearsal studios, their whole studio's got my art all around the whole place.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, but it takes on its, starts to take on its own life now. So once again, 5 years later, here I just like a few months ago, I just landed a huge deal with the biggest catering company in Cleveland and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They just came out with a 28-page full color event menu that features my work throughout the whole thing. Never been done like that. Now, had I been there and suggested this idea to them, they would have said no. We're not doing. They just corporations just say no. We're going to do something else. But now that I moved away, here comes that game. It's like you almost become exotic when you leave where you come from.
Now they want to reach you. They want to go look for you.
Yes,
But
it's the strangest thing.
Next to them,
Yeah, I think it happens in everywhere. Everybody we knew had to leave to go somewhere else. Miles Davis, it didn't matter. Tina Turner, everybody had to go. Jimi Hendrix, they had to go overseas to do what they do to get recognized back here in America.
Very good. Mm-hmm. Well, we recognize you.
Well, no, it's just a game. But once again, I start to pay attention to the game because it's easy to get frustrated because you're like, why isn't anybody getting this, or why isn't anybody? But once you see the pattern of what other people had to do too, other artists, other musicians, they had to go through the same thing. Mm-hmm. It was even harder for them, But then once they went away and came back, and then all of a sudden, bang! Now they're geniuses at what they do now, right? So I'm like, okay, this is nothing new here. So Neal, you got to walk, across the burning sands too.
Mm-hmm. So what's the plan for Paint Out Loud?
Well, the plan right now is we're doing very good in merchandising now. I work for, like I said, Carlos Santana. A lot of these major stars call me now to do their custom guitars, so they've seen that we like your work. Let's get it on guitars too. Plus that's part of our charitable company. We raise lots of money for charities, Wounded Warriors, children's hospitals, Cancer Society. All that's part of the Guitar Project. So we've done very good with that. So now people are like, let's put this stuff on merchandise. So that's what we're gearing up for now is to licensing and merchandise stuff now.
And every piece you make has your signature on the face of the musician.
The eye, somewhere near the eye. I have that white negative space. I just kind of do a little notch or something. I got a lot of little hidden things going on. I'm trying to think of all the little things I've heard other artists in the world do. To make the art, more, something. So as I get older, and if I depart this world one day and the art exists, which it does, it'll go on. They'll be able to identify the real, authentic pieces that way.
Yeah, for that empty space. How'd you come up with that?
I don't know. It's just sitting there trying to think, just thinking it out. One day, I was actually just spending real time to think, okay, if you're going to do this and you're going to get back in the fine art world, whatever you do, how do you make your stuff very, very unique? First of all, how are you going to make it very authentic for collectors? Okay, because that's what this is all about. You want one day people to really collect and them to know that they actually have an authentic Hamilton, for instance. So I try to come up with all these little things to make sure everything was in place, and so far it's kind of, I've gotten lucky and it's okay.
Very good.
Yeah.
I like it. Well, that's one of the things that I recognized of your art when I first met you, is that all of them have that empty spot. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very cool.
Even the Batman, one or two somewhere.
Even the Batmans that you did, the Batman and Superman.
Spider-Man, all of them. I did that just because some guy said, "Well, can you apply your style to something else?" Of course I can. Because like I said, once again, everybody thinks I only do celebrities. No, that's not what I can do. Anything that somebody. I'm still a professional illustrator, so I can do whatever now. But that's what I like doing the most because these are my friends. I know these people. Comfortable with them. They're comfortable with me, and we're working on all kinds of projects now that I think that are going to really start to do some cool stuff.
Very good. Mm-hmm. So, for any artists up and coming who want to grow up to be just like you, including me.
I hope not, but go ahead. No, that's,
what kind of advice do you have?
Well, first of all, there's that. I like how you said that. I would go against that in the sense no, you don't want to be like me. Because when I was growing up, I went after one of the best illustrators in Cleveland who was if you went to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, the Baseball Hall of Fame, he did all the work for all the sports stuff. This guy was wonderful, Gary Thomas. He's been my mentor and friend today. So when I was young and somebody, I think I was getting a haircut one day and I was talking about, I'd like to get into football and sports. And I think one of the Cleveland Browns players who just happened to be in the chair next to me, he overheard me. He says, "You know what, young man, you need to see my friend Gary Thomas. Here's his number, you need to call him up." So I was dead on that, right? knocking on his door. He's probably looking at me like, okay, who's this little kid, right? And from that point on, he took me under his wing, and I just learned everything he did. But I got so good at copying him. See what I'm saying? That now here's the problem that a lot of young artists want. Like we said, you don't want to be like me or somebody that you admire. Use them to get you to learn to go up, but after a while, you have to separate and create your own voice. You have to. But see, a lot of times people get caught up in copying somebody else so much that they truly become something that they're not. So that's why I want to make sure there's a very fine line there where you now have to step off that path and become your voice.
Have your own style. Have your own message.
Yes. Because after a while, it's like, who are you? I mean, my work just look just like my mentor's work. Now, we both can't do the same thing. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
That just starts to cause confusion in the world. That was his style, his technique. I'm just emulating it. So now it's time, okay, break off, Neal. You better go find your voice. So that's what we want to say to young people, too. You use it for a little while, but you got to know how to veer off, too, and do your own thing.
And find your own voice.
You have to, yes.
And how did you find yours?
Well, with just what happened with Paint Out Loud, when that fire happened.
That fire.
Because if you saw my portfolio before that, everything was your traditional type of stuff. I mean, I could paint a Rembrandt. I could do this. I could do commercial. I could do all the things, airbrush. I could do all the things you had to do. But it still, to me, did not stand out in a crowd. So, but this brand now, it stood out. So now, when people see it, they know right away that's Neal Hamilton. All that other stuff I did before, nobody could ever identify it. They say, oh, it looks nice, but they didn't know who did it. Just like in our world today, you know, all the greatest artists we know out there, you can identify the second you walk into a building and you see that person's or that person, you know who it is. And that's what we're trying to tell the young people, too. You have to develop a style that sticks in people's minds. Even though there's thousands and thousands of great artists out here, how do you make yours stick out in the crowd?
Yeah.
That takes some doing and takes some real thought. You really have to put some time into that one.
Yeah. That's a good goal.
Yeah, it is. You know, so I just tell I just try to tell a lot of young people I work with. I just try to tell them the truth. I don't candy coat something with them. I just say, hey, no, okay, that's great. You have the ability, but now stop here and now start to create who you are, what's in you.
That's the point. I think if you don't do that, then you're wasting your talent.
You're just wasting your talent. That's right.
You're being a Xerox machine.
That's all you are. Right.
I'm against that.
That's right. Nobody will ever know who you are, and you're not in the game to be forgotten.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Okay. Well. If people want to get in touch with you, where do we find you online?
Well, they can find me on Facebook, and Neal Hamilton or Paint Out Loud on Instagram, and they can on my website, Neal, Neal Hamilton.com, and my other website is www.mnnguitarproject.com. That stands for Music Nashville News Guitar Project. Okay, so that's one of my more fun projects now is working with all these major celebrities. I mean, we did the guitars for the Grammys for Paul McCartney. He autographed the guitars, and they both sold for like $35,000 each, and that money goes to charities. The artists say, Neal, we want you to paint these guitars, but then they get to decide what charity the money goes to, and we've done very well with that. I kind of like that because it's all about giving back too. You know, the fun part really is the giving back part, and then when you know you've helped somebody with your talent, that's how the karmic wheel works.
Yeah, that's right. Very good. Well, I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you for sharing with us. I know this is, I did an interview with you before, and it was about as long. I think I heard your story a few times.
We didn't talk too long, did we? I know, but it's changing now. You know, I don't, like I said, I don't say a whole lot sometimes. I'm always out and about, watching what other artists do. I like to support and be around, and I love watching what the young people are doing today, like with the gentleman you had on before me. I just love to hear them and what they're up to. Yeah. I can sit there and smile inside and go, wow, we've done something right, even back in the days when we were doing things manually and the hard way. But I love to see the advancement of what artists have done today. So when they finally, find out who I am, they go, oh my God, you done this, please come to us and just shine some light on us. And I just go there and give what I can give and just get out of the way and let them do what they do.
Yeah. Well, we thank you for that.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate you, sir.
You too, Daniel.
And gonna talk again soon.
I'm sure we will.
See where Paint Out Loud is going next.
Oh yeah, we're getting ready to do some good things. They say my work's taking off in Paris right now and overseas and other places. I'm like, huh? I didn't do anything with anybody over there, but social media, once again, stuff gets out there.
Yeah.
Pinterest. I didn't know anything about that. And somebody in a meeting asked me, do you have a presence on Pinterest? I'm like, what's Pinterest? I didn't know at the time. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden somebody pulled it up and the whole front page had my work all over it already. I'm like, okay. So somebody else is doing stuff for me.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome, sir.
Much success.
All right. Thank you very much. I'll see you very soon. Thanks for having me.
This has been an Artist King presentation, and I am your host, DTM. Thank you for listening, and see you next week.